Hello, my name is Jeffrey Nicholas. I'm an associate professor of philosophy at Providence College. This is one in a continuing series of lectures on Alasdair MacIntyre's Dependent Rational Animals, and we are looking specifically at Chapter 12, in which MacIntyre discusses proxies, friends, and truthfulness. In the last lecture, we were talking about the conditions for a political society and emphasizing the idea that such a political society entailed the participation of each person as an independent practical reasoner, because it is only exercising our capacity as independent practical reasoners that we are able to flourish as the human animals that we are, and that this requires relationships within communities and within families, and taking care of coming to a common mind through political deliberation, something that is not afforded to us within the modern liberal nation state and within modern families living within the modern nation state. This chapter continues that discussion by focusing on how we act for others, particularly children and the disabled, within that situation, and how we aim at being honest and truthful within those communities, because it's only through that truthfulness that we are able to come to a common mind. So part of what's at issue here is the intelligibility that we have towards each other, and not just the intelligibility, but the accountability that we have with each other. So if we are living in the ideal, or if we are trying to build the ideal community of shared deliberation, so something not what we have in the modern nation state, but what we could have if we tried to direct our lives according to our practical reasoning, and building those communities and building those networks of relations of giving and receiving, then it's necessary for us to be able to be intelligible to others. And that means that we have to be able to put to the question others and be put to the question by others, right? So we have to make our desires and our goods known to others, right, through this shared deliberation. And that means overcoming various possible obstacles that might be there. And of course, here we might talk about disabilities, but we also might talk about prejudices, or we might just talk about just the time and energy needed to come to the question to others and to ourselves. And this means understanding where we are in our own situation, what our goals are, and how we are to achieve those goals in the conditions that we have. And so what we have to do is learn to scrutinize ourselves and understand ourselves as others do. Now, this is part of the entire argument that we've been building up, right? And that as we develop from childhood to adulthood, part of what we're doing is learning to step back from our desires, evaluate those desires, and transform them so that we have new desires. But that means that we have to learn from others how to do that, how to step back, and also learn from others who we ourselves are. We talked about that in previous chapters. Okay, within the political realm, this is important because if we have not learned to distance ourselves from our desires and evaluate them, we're not going to be able to participate in coming to a common mind with others, because we will fail to scrutinize ourselves and fail to see where we share with others what is necessary for leading that common life. So again, if you just think about a simple practice like baseball or dance, right? Part of what we're doing is we're learning to step back from that, from our initial desires, and learning how to transform our desires so that they become important within the context of baseball or dance or whatever sport that we're playing, or whatever practice that we're engaged in, so that we are able to flourish and communicate with others. So in terms of baseball, it's not just about becoming the greatest batter ever, and therefore we drug ourselves or dope our blood, and so that we can hit more and more baseball home runs. But it's rather about becoming part of a team and learning to work with that team so that we develop as a functioning team where we each get to exercise our capacities. And same thing with dance. What dances do we put on throughout the year? That becomes a political conversation, just like doping our blood becomes a political conversation within the practice. And making ourselves intelligible to others, part of what's necessary is understanding the history of each person so that we understand what the person brings to and takes from the different roles and opportunities within a situation. Why does this person really want to be a pitcher or a catcher or play first base? Why does this person really want to be the lead in this dance, right? And so we have to understand, does that person have a history where they're able to bring something to that role, and what will they learn from that role that will help us as a community grow and help them as a person grow, right? And so here we have to be accountable, right? We have to be able to say, I am able to be responsible here and to support the team. So I have to learn how to speak for myself, but that means I also have to learn how to speak for the other, because I have to be able to imagine and articulate what the other sees as him or herself contributing to and needing from this practice that we're in. And if it's true within the practices that we participate, it's more true within the politics of our local community, right? And so we have to understand the other as much as possible from their point of view so that we can help them to grow, but also help ourselves to become um, uh, part of a flourishing group with this person. That means that truthfulness is necessary, right? And the lack of truthfulness, the lack of honesty, prevents others from learning from me and prevents me from learning from others, okay? And in fact, what it does is it hides the nature of our relationship. And so, what McIntyre has been doing sort of subtly throughout the second half of this book is articulating a perspective in which what is necessary for us to flourish as independent practical reasoners is to have a certain self-knowledge and a certain kind of relationship with others, relationships of giving and receiving, because it's only within those relationships that we are able to articulate our common goods, many of which are shared. And so we talked about the theater as a shared common good in um, the last chapter. We talk about baseball as a shared common good, or whatever we might talk about. If we hide the nature of those relationships, right, because we're dishonest, then we set ourselves adrift and we can never come to something where we flourish, not only as an individual, but as a community, right? And McIntyre finds it problematic, the kinds of arguments that Richard Rorty has against this perspective. Richard Rorty was a 20th century philosopher who made significant contributions to our understanding of modern epistemology and politics, and he developed what he understood as this sort of ironic disposition to politics, in the sense that when we commit to politics, we're doing so with a certain sort of irony, in the sense that we don't take it as seriously and life-defining as it possibly could be. And what McIntyre sees in this is a problem with how we understand what we're doing in politics. And of course, what we've argued about throughout the last couple of chapters is that politics is the conditions in which we as independent practical reasoners exercise and flourish as independent practical reasoners. And that requires a certain kind of vocabulary in which we come to this shared mind. And what Rorty wants to do is say that we have to reject that final vocabulary and doubt it as a final vocabulary. And for McIntyre, that means that we have to be dishonest about what we're doing there. Because if we're not committed to that final vocabulary, we can never articulate what it is that we ourselves are coming to try to explain to others, and to hold ourselves accountable and to come to a common mind with others. Now, I put aside for a moment whether McIntyre is accurately interpreting Rorty. I have no reason to doubt that he is. But what I want to do is emphasize this idea that for McIntyre, what we're doing is, in political debate, is trying to articulate together our shared common goods. And that requires a shared language by which we understand certain things to mean the same thing. So the goods of baseball, what are those? The goods of dance, the goods of theater. We have to be able to articulate those in relationship to the virtues and relationships of giving and receiving that we have. And if Rorty is saying that we have to put all of that into question, then it undermines our capacity as a community to articulate our needs together so that each is given according to his or her needs and each contributes according to his or her ability. So McIntyre says we cannot withdraw from a shared language. Rather, what we can do is question different aspects of that language and different concepts as we try to articulate what it is that we see in our relationships. Because it's those relationships that require a shared language, because we need that shared language to know others, and to know ourselves, and to engage in that shared deliberation. However, McIntyre does not think that makes us a prisoner of the shared language in any radical sense of imprisonment. Rather, we can always put to question various aspects of that shared language. We just can't put to question the whole shared language until we come to an epistemological crisis, which is a conversation that actually exists outside of this chapter, in which we come to doubt our way of living. So, just as an example of what that might entail, the environmental crisis that we face today, and which COVID is an example of, puts to question the shared language of modernity and capitalism and liberalism, because we can no longer live with this idea that we are individuals who can take from the earth what we need without ever giving back. And so that itself puts in question the shared language, and so therefore we might have to go learn a different shared language. But we can't really understand how that shared language is put in question if we don't already have some kind of commitment to it. So the irony here is that it is within our shared language that we come to be able to question our own commitments and our own values and our own virtues, and to exercise ourselves as independent practical reasoners. I don't see as much of a contrast between Rorty and McIntyre as I think many people might think there is. I think it's a question about the nuances of what we mean when we say that there is an irony there in terms of how we understand the shared language that we do. Always we have to be able to put into question, right? This is part of what it means to be an independent practical reasoner, put in question our desires and our reason, but we have to have a language that we share with others in order to do that.